The perpetual darkness of space enveloped the command ship as it hovered over the small agricultural planet of Mandara. Standing at the viewport, General Tiberius watched with cold, mechanical eyes as his fleet positioned itself for the imminent invasion. Half of his face gleamed with polished metal, neural implants pulsing with blue light beneath his skin. The other half remained human, though it had been years since anyone had seen emotion cross those features. "Preparations are complete, General," announced Commander Vex, approaching with practiced caution. "Ground troops await your command." Tiberius didn't turn. His enhanced vision zoomed in on the planet's surface, calculating optimal invasion points with brutal efficiency. Mandara was the last unconquered territory at the galaxy's edge, its fertile lands and abundant resources making it a valuable asset to the Gorth Empire. "Begin the landing sequence," Tiberius ordered, his voice a metallic echo of what was once human. "I want control of the northern hemisphere by nightfall." The Gorth Empire had risen to power through technological superiority and ruthless conquest. For 20 years, Tiberius had been their most effective weapon, a living legend whose name alone caused planets to surrender. The perfect merger of machine and man. He had sacrificed his humanity for power and efficiency. Emotions were inefficient. Compassion was weakness. These were the truths that guided his existence. "There are reports of minimal resistance in the agricultural sectors," Vex added. "Mostly farmers and villagers. They have no military to speak of." "Then this will be swift." Tiberius replied, "Deploy the intimidation protocols. I want them to understand the futility of resistance." As dropships descended toward Mandara's surface, Tiberius felt nothing. No anticipation, no triumph, not even the satisfaction of another conquest. The cybernetic enhancements that made him the Empire's most feared general had also severed his connection to such human frailties. The Empire had engineered him this way, replacing damaged tissue and limbs with machinery after a catastrophic battle early in his career. What began as necessary medical intervention evolved into voluntary improvements until Tiberius became more machine than man. The neurosuppressors implanted in his brain stem ensured that emotions wouldn't interfere with his tactical decisions. The Empire needed a commander who could make choices based on cold logic, unhindered by sentiment or moral qualms. Tiberius had become that commander, and his record of unbroken victories proved the wisdom of their approach. He boarded his personal transport, flanked by elite cyborg guards. It was unusual for a general of his rank to participate in the initial landing, but Tiberius preferred to assess new conquests personally. Something about Mandara had caught his attention in the preliminary reports, something he couldn't quite define but felt compelled to investigate. The dropship cut through Mandara's atmosphere, descending toward a valley surrounded by vast agricultural fields. As they approached, Tiberius observed the primitive dwellings and simple technology of the inhabitants. These people lived much as humans had millennia ago on old Earth, working the land with minimal machinery and living in harmony with their environment. "Pathetic," he murmured. Such societies were always the easiest to subjugate. When the ship landed in a clearing near a small village, Tiberius emerged to find the expected scene of terror. Villagers fled before his troops, screaming and abandoning their possessions. Standard response to invasion forces. His cybernetically enhanced hearing detected heartbeats accelerating in fear. Breathing patterns indicating panic. All predictable, all according to plan. He strode through the village, his heavy mechanized footsteps leaving imprints in the soft soil. The ground troops had already secured the perimeter and were gathering villagers in the central square for processing. Those who would cooperate would be allowed to continue their agricultural work under imperial supervision. Those who resisted would be eliminated or sent to labor camps in the Empire's industrial worlds. It was then that Tiberius noticed something unusual. A small figure darting between buildings, moving not away from the troops, but towards something at the village edge. Curious, he changed course to follow. Beyond the last row of houses, a small wooded area began. The figure, a child, Tiberius now realized, had knelt beside something lying on the ground. As Tiberius approached, his vision automatically enhanced to identify the scene. A boy of approximately 10 standard years, tending to an injured animal that had been caught in the crossfire of the landing. The creature was one of Mandara's indigenous species, something like a fox with iridescent fur that shifted colors with its breathing. One of its legs was badly wounded, and it made pitiful whimpering sounds as the boy carefully examined it. "You should run, like the others," Tiberius said, stopping several meters away. The boy looked up, his eyes widening at the sight of the imposing cyborg general. But instead of fleeing, he placed himself protectively in front of the injured animal. "Are you going to kill us?" the boy asked, his voice surprisingly steady. Tiberius tilted his head, analyzing the question. "I have no orders regarding indigenous wildlife. As for you, that depends on your cooperation." The boy frowned, clearly not understanding the clinical response. "I'm Luca," he said simply. "And this is Kima. She's hurt." "That is evident," Tiberius replied. He watched as the boy tore a strip from his own shirt to bind the creature's wound. "Why do you help it? It is not human. It has no value to you." Luca looked confused by the question. "She's in pain. Why wouldn't I help her?" The simple answer caused something unexpected in Tiberius's neural network, a momentary disruption, like static across his consciousness. It was gone before his diagnostic systems could identify it. "Inefficient," Tiberius stated. "The animal will likely die regardless of your intervention." "Maybe," Luca acknowledged, gently stroking the creature's head. "But at least she won't be alone and scared when she does." Another disruption, stronger this time. Tiberius's systems ran a quick self-diagnostic but found no malfunction. Something about the boy's actions and words was causing anomalies in his processing patterns. "General," Commander Vex's voice came through his communication implant. "We've secured the village, awaiting your orders for the next phase." "Proceed as planned." Tiberius responded automatically. "I will rejoin you shortly." He looked down at the boy again. "Your village is now under Imperial control. Report to the central square for processing." Luca didn't move. "I can't leave, Kima." "Your attachment to this creature is illogical," Tiberius said, feeling another strange flicker in his neural pathways. "It compromises your survival probability." "Some things are more important than surviving," Luca replied, his young face solemn. Tiberius should have ordered the boy seized and forcibly taken to the processing center. It was protocol. Instead, he found himself reaching into a compartment in his armor and extracting a small medical kit. He knelt beside the boy and the animal, his massive frame dwarfing them both. "The binding is incorrect," he said, removing the makeshift bandage. "It will cause further tissue damage." With surprising gentleness from his cybernetic hands, Tiberius applied a proper dressing to the creature's wound, then administered a mild painkiller from his kit. "This will stabilize it until proper treatment can be administered," he explained, uncertain why he was bothering to help this insignificant life form. Luca watched with wide eyes. "Thank you," he said, smiling up at the fearsome general as though he were just another person. "I knew you weren't as scary as you look." Tiberius stood abruptly, disturbed by the interaction. "Take it to your dwelling and remain there. I will inform the troops that this section has been cleared." He turned and strode away, running intensive diagnostic programs as he walked. Why had he assisted the boy? Why had he deviated from protocol? No malfunction was detected in his systems, yet his behavior had been inconsistent with his programming and training. For the remainder of the day, as Tiberius oversaw the subjugation of the village and established the initial imperial presence, his thoughts repeatedly returned to the encounter with Luca. The boy's compassion for a wounded animal was inefficient, illogical, and contrary to survival instincts, yet Tiberius could not classify it as wrong. That night, instead of returning to the command ship as planned, Tiberius ordered a temporary command center established in the village. He told his officers it was to maintain a stronger presence during the critical early phase of occupation. The truth, which he did not examine too closely, was that he felt compelled to observe the boy further. Under cover of darkness, Tiberius made his way to the small dwelling where his troops had reported Luca lived with his parents. The family had been processed and classified as non-resistant, allowed to continue their agricultural work under imperial supervision. Through the window, Tiberius could see the boy sitting at a simple table, carefully tending to the injured creature that now lay in a makeshift bed. The scene triggered something in Tiberius's organic brain, a memory fragment from before his transformation. A woman's face, gentle hands tending to his own injuries after some childhood accident. The memory was so faded and corrupted by years of neural suppression that he could not identify who the woman was or what had happened. Only the sensation of being cared for. His observation was interrupted by a soft voice. "Would you like to come in?" Tiberius turned to find Luca's father standing nearby, a weathered man with kind eyes that showed no fear despite addressing the notorious general who had just conquered his world. "I am conducting a security assessment," Tiberius replied stiffly. The man smiled slightly. "Of course, but perhaps you could conduct it inside, where my wife can offer you some tea. The nights get cold here." This was not how conquered people were supposed to behave. They should be terrified, resentful, submissive at best, not offering tea to their conqueror as though he were a neighbor paying a visit. Against all logic and protocol, Tiberius found himself accepting the invitation. Inside the humble dwelling, Luca looked up from his patient and smiled brightly at the cyborg general. "Kima is doing better. Your medicine helped." "The creature's chances of survival have marginally improved," Tiberius acknowledged, standing awkwardly in the small room, his imposing frame making the space seem even smaller. Luca's mother, a woman with the same gentle eyes as her husband, showed no outward sign of fear as she offered Tiberius a cup of steaming liquid. "Please, sit if you can," she said, gesturing to a sturdy-looking chair. Tiberius hesitated, then lowered himself carefully onto the seat, which creaked under the weight of his cybernetic body, but held. He accepted the cup automatically. Though he had no need for human sustenance, his body processed nutrients through a much more efficient system. "Thank you for helping our son today," Luca's father said, sitting across from him. "I'm Elian. This is my wife, Sira. I am General Tiberius of the Gorth Empire," he responded formally, unsure of the social protocols for this unusual situation. "Your world is now under imperial protection." "Is that what you call it?" Sarah asked, not confrontationally but with genuine curiosity. "The Empire brings order and technological advancement to primitive worlds," Tiberius recited. "Your agricultural output will increase by approximately 340% under Imperial management." "And what will happen to the people who have farmed this land for generations?" Elian asked. "Those who cooperate will be permitted to continue their work under supervision. Those who resist will be relocated." "Relocated where?" Luca asked, joining the conversation as he gently stroked the sleeping creature. Tiberius found himself unwilling to explain the labor camps to the boy. "To other places where their skills can be utilized," he said instead. "Will they be happy there?" Luca pressed. Another neural disruption flickered through Tiberius's systems. Happiness was not a metric the Empire measured or valued. Efficiency, productivity, obedience. These were the standards by which success was judged. "Happiness is irrelevant to imperial concerns," he stated. "That's sad," Luca said simply. "Isn't it important for you to be happy too?" Tiberius had no answer. The concept of his own happiness had not occurred to him in years. His purpose was to serve the Empire, to conquer and subjugate. Personal satisfaction did not factor into his function. The conversation shifted to other topics. Luca's parents asked surprisingly intelligent questions about the Empire, its structure, its technologies. Tiberius found himself engaged in the discussion, explaining concepts he had never bothered to elucidate for conquered peoples before. When he finally rose to leave, hours had passed. Hours in which he had neglected his duties, an unprecedented lapse. "You're welcome to visit again," Sarah told him at the door. "Luca would like that, I think." "That would be irregular," Tiberius replied, yet found himself adding, but perhaps necessary for ongoing security assessments. As he walked back to the command center, Tiberius ran a complete system diagnostic, searching for the malfunction that must be causing his aberrant behavior. Again, no technical issues were detected. The disruption was occurring in the organic portions of his brain, in areas the Empire's engineers had deemed non-essential and left largely untouched. Over the following weeks, as the imperial occupation of Mendara proceeded according to standard protocols, Tiberius found himself drawn repeatedly to Luca's home. He told himself it was to monitor the unusual family, to ensure they weren't fostering resistance. But the truth, which he was beginning to acknowledge, was that something about their simple, compassionate existence fascinated him. Luca's kindness extended beyond the rescued animal, which had indeed survived and now followed the boy everywhere. Tiberius observed as the child helped elderly villagers carry water, shared his food with other children, and once spent an entire day helping a neighbor rebuild a storage shed damaged during the invasion. Why do you expend energy helping others when there is no benefit to yourself? Tiberius asked him one evening as they walked along the edge of a field. These walks had become a strange ritual, the fearsome general and the small boy strolling side by side as the sun set over Mendara's rolling hills. It makes me feel good, Luca explained, and it makes them feel good too. Isn't that enough? The Empire teaches that individual feelings are irrelevant compared to collective progress, Tiberius said, reciting doctrine that had been programmed into him years ago. Luca considered this. But isn't the point of progress to make life better? And if people aren't happy, how is life better? Another disruption in Tiberius's neural network, stronger than before. The boy's simple logic cut through decades of imperial conditioning like a plasma blade through armor. These disruptions were becoming more frequent, accompanied by fragmented memories from Tiberius's pre-cyborg life. A child playing in a field similar to this one. A woman's laughter. The sensation of rain on human skin. These memories should have been erased or suppressed by his neural implants, yet they were surfacing with increasing clarity. One day, Tiberius arrived at Luca's home to find the boy sitting outside, drawing in the dirt with a stick. "What are you creating?" Tiberius asked, his voice less mechanical than it had been weeks before. "It's you," Luca said, pointing to a crude figure with half a circle for a face. "And this is me, and Kima, and my parents. We're having a picnic." Tiberius studied the drawing. "This is not an accurate representation. My dimensions are incorrect, and I do not participate in recreational activities." Luca laughed. "It's not supposed to be exactly right. It's how I imagine it could be. Don't you ever imagine things?" "Imagination is inefficient," Tiberius replied automatically. But even as he spoke, he found himself visualizing the scene Luca had drawn. Himself, free of armor, sitting on grass, experiencing something as simple as a meal outdoors with people who showed no fear of him. The neural disruption that followed was so intense that Tiberius's systems momentarily shut down, causing him to stagger. Luca jumped up in alarm. "Are you okay?" Tiberius's backup systems engaged, stabilizing his functions. "A minor malfunction. It has been corrected." But it hadn't been. Something was changing within him, something his diagnostic programs couldn't identify or repair. The neurosuppressors that had kept his emotions in check for decades were failing, allowing feelings to seep through the mechanical barriers. That night, alone in his quarters at the command center, Tiberius experienced something he had not felt in 20 years, a dream. Not the data processing his cybernetic brain performed during rest cycles, but a true dream, vivid and emotional. He saw himself as he had been before, fully human, living a life he had long forgotten. And when he woke, moisture was leaking from his remaining organic eye, a tear, his analytical mind supplied. He was crying. Alarmed, Tiberius initiated an emergency communication with the Empire's Central Command. "This is General Tiberius. I am experiencing critical system failures and require immediate extraction for repairs." The response was prompt. "Understood, General. Maintain current position. A medical transport will arrive within 48 hours. Complete stasis is recommended until arrival. Stasis would shut down both his organic and cybernetic systems, placing him in suspended animation until the Empire's engineers could examine him. It was the logical course of action. Yet Tiberius found himself reluctant. If he entered stasis now, the emerging feelings and memories might be permanently erased. Something within him, the remnant of his human self, rebelled against that prospect. Instead of following orders, Tiberius found himself walking through the sleeping village to Luca's home. The boy's parents were surprised to see him at such a late hour but invited him in as always. "Something troubles you," Elian observed, seeing the unusual expression on Tiberius's partly human face. "I am experiencing malfunctions," Tiberius admitted. "The Empire will repair me, but He struggled to articulate what he had never needed to express before. "I am uncertain if I wish to be repaired." Sarah's eyes showed understanding. "Because the malfunction is allowing you to feel again?" Tiberius looked at her in surprise. "You are aware of my condition." "We've watched you change these past weeks," she said gently. "The way you speak, the questions you ask, you're remembering what it means to be human." "The Empire requires me to be more than human," Tiberius said. "Enhanced, efficient. Emotions are classified as weaknesses to be eliminated. And yet the strongest people I know are those who feel deeply," Elian said. "Compassion isn't weakness, General. It's the greatest strength we possess." Luca, who had been listening from his bedroom doorway, came to sit beside Tiberius. "If they fix you, will you forget us?" The question caused another surge of emotion. Fear. Tiberius recognized. Fear of losing these newfound connections, of returning to the cold, empty existence he had known for so long. "It is probable," he acknowledged, "my aberrant behavior would be corrected." "Then don't let them fix you," Luca said with a child's simple logic. "Stay here with us." "The Empire would not permit a desertion," Tiberius explained. "They would send others to retrieve me. Your world would suffer for harboring a defector." "Then what will you do?" Sarah asked. Tiberius had no answer. For the first time in decades, he faced a situation for which he had no protocol, no strategic analysis, no clear path forward. The decision was postponed by the arrival of unexpected news the following morning. Commander Vex approached Tiberius with visible unease. "General, we've received new orders from Imperial Command. Operation Final Harvest has been authorized for Mandara." Tiberius knew what this meant. Final Harvest was the Empire's euphemism for complete resource extraction, strip mining a planet of all valuable materials, regardless of the impact on its inhabitants or ecosystem. It was reserved for worlds deemed too troublesome to manage long-term or those whose resources were needed immediately for Imperial projects. "The population?" Tiberius asked, though he already knew the answer. "Relocation for those with useful skills," Vex replied. "The remainder are classified as expendable." Expendable. The word echoed in Tiberius's mind. Luca, his parents, the villagers who had cautiously accepted imperial rule, all deemed expendable by the distant authorities of the Gorth Empire. "The first phase begins tomorrow," Vex continued. "Heavy machinery is already en route. Your medical transport has been reassigned to arrive after the operation is complete." Tiberius nodded, dismissing the commander. Alone. He struggled with the conflict raging within him. His programming demanded obedience to imperial orders. The oath he had taken as a young officer, before the cybernetic enhancements, required loyalty to the Empire above all else. But the reawakening human part of him recoiled at the thought of Mandara's destruction, of Luca's death. That evening, instead of visiting Luca's family, Tiberius secluded himself in his quarters, reviewing the Final Harvest protocols and searching for alternatives. There were none. The Empire's decision was final, its methods absolute. Mandara would be destroyed, its people scattered or eliminated, its once fertile lands reduced to barren rock. As night deepened, Tiberius made his decision. It was not the result of strategic calculation or probability analysis. It emerged from the human heart that still beat beneath layers of cybernetic enhancement, from the conscience that had lain dormant for 20 years. At dawn, instead of preparing for the arrival of the harvest fleet, Tiberius called his senior officers to the command center. Commander Vex and the others stood at attention, awaiting orders for the day's grim work. Operation Final Harvest has been canceled, Tiberius announced. All Imperial forces will withdraw from Mandara immediately. The officers exchanged confused glances. Vex stepped forward. General, those orders came directly from Central Command. We don't have the authority to cancel them. I am exercising emergency override protocol, Tiberius stated, his voice firm. Mandara's agricultural potential has been reassessed and deemed essential to Imperial interests. Harvesting this world would be short-sighted and counterproductive. It was a lie, and from the expressions of his officers, not an entirely convincing one. But none dared to openly challenge the legendary General Tiberius, whose ruthless efficiency was known throughout the galaxy. Prepare for immediate withdrawal, Tiberius ordered. I will remain with a skeleton crew to establish a sustainable agricultural program before rejoining the fleet. The officers saluted and departed to carry out the unexpected orders. Only Vex lingered, studying Tiberius with a calculating gaze. This is highly irregular, General, he said quietly. Central Command will demand an explanation, which I will provide in due time. Tiberius replied. Proceed with the withdrawal, Commander. Vex hesitated, then saluted, and left. Tiberius knew the commander's loyalty was to the Empire first, not to him personally. It was likely Vex would report the strange orders directly to Central Command. Time was limited. As the Imperial troops began their withdrawal, creating confusion among the villagers who had expected another day of occupation, Tiberius made his way to Luca's home. He found the family preparing their morning meal, unaware of the dramatic changes occurring around them. You must leave, Tiberius said without preamble. All of you. The village, everyone. The Empire plans to destroy this world. Elian stood, alarmed. Destroy? But why? Resources, efficiency. The Empire's needs supersede all other considerations. Tiberius moved to the window, watching for any sign of Imperial troops. I've ordered a withdrawal, but it won't last. They'll send others, probably within days. Where can we go? Sarah asked, already moving to gather essentials. The Empire controls everything in this sector. There are uncharted regions beyond the galaxy's edge. Tiberius said, places the Empire considers too remote or resource-poor to be worth conquering. I can provide coordinates, but transportation will be difficult. Luca approached Tiberius, his young face serious. You're coming with us, right? Another neural disruption, this one accompanied by a surge of what Tiberius now recognized as affection. My presence would endanger you. The Empire will hunt me as a defector. But they'll hunt you anyway, won't they? Elian asked. Once they realize you've disobeyed orders? Tiberius nodded. His career, his life as he had known it, was already over. The moment he had chosen compassion over duty, he had become an enemy of the Empire he had served for decades. Then we go together, Luca said firmly, taking Tiberius's cybernetic hand in his small human one. All of us. The plan came together quickly. Tiberius used his command codes to access Imperial transportation networks, arranging for a colony ship that had been scheduled for decommissioning. The vessel was old but serviceable, capable of transporting several hundred people to the coordinates Tiberius had identified. A small, habitable moon in an uncharted system, overlooked by Imperial surveys due to its lack of valuable minerals. Word spread through the village. Families packed what they could carry and made their way to the landing field where the colony ship waited. Not everyone chose to leave. Some couldn't believe the Empire would destroy their home. Others feared the unknown more than they feared Imperial rule. Tiberius didn't force anyone. The choice to stay or go had to be theirs. his first act of respect for the autonomy he had denied to so many worlds before. As the evacuation proceeded, Tiberius's communicator signaled an incoming Imperial transmission. Commander Vex, as expected, had reported directly to Central Command. The Empire was not pleased. General Tiberius, came the cold voice of Strategic Overseer Maddox, the highest-ranking official in the sector. Your recent orders have been countermanded. The withdrawal is cancelled. Operation Final Harvest will proceed as planned. You are ordered to report to the medical transport for immediate evaluation and repair. I decline, Tiberius responded simply. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the communication. Clarify, General. Are you refusing a direct order? I am. Tiberius felt an unexpected sensation, a lightness, as though a great weight had been lifted from him. The Empire's policy on Mandara is flawed. This world and its people have value beyond resource extraction. This is the result of your system malfunction, Maddox said dismissively. Your emotional suppressors have clearly failed. Report for repairs immediately, and this insubordination will be overlooked. My systems are functioning precisely as they should, Tiberius replied. For the first time in 20 years, I am seeing clearly. The Empire's methods are wasteful, short-sighted, and cruel. I will no longer participate in them. This is treason, Tiberius, Maddox warned. The consequences will be severe. I am aware, Tiberius said, ending the transmission. He knew what would happen next. Imperial forces would be dispatched immediately to retake Mandara and capture or kill the defector general. The evacuation had to be completed quickly. By nightfall, the colony ship was loaded with several hundred villagers and their essential possessions. Luca and his parents helped organize the boarding, ensuring that the elderly and children were settled comfortably for what would be a long journey. As Tiberius prepared the ship for departure, Imperial sensors detected approaching vessels, a battle cruiser responding to Maddox's orders, arriving much sooner than expected. We need to leave now, Tiberius told Elian. The Empire is coming. There are still people on their way, Elian protested. Families from the outer farms. Tiberius calculated the odds. If they waited, the Imperial forces would arrive before the stragglers, and no one would escape. If they left immediately, those already aboard would have a chance at a new life. In his former existence, the choice would have been simple: sacrifice the few for the many, a cold equation of maximum efficiency. But now, as he looked at Luca's worried face, Tiberius found he could not abandon anyone. I will hold them off, he decided. Get everyone on board. When the last person is aboard, launch immediately, regardless of whether I have returned. No, Luca cried, grabbing Tiberius's arm. You have to come with us. Tiberius knelt to the boy's level, something he had never done before. The motion felt strange, humbling. I will try to return, Luca, but the people must come first. Luca's eyes filled with tears. You promised to teach me how to build a shelter like you learned when you were a boy. You promised. Another memory fragment surfaced in Tiberius's mind, himself as a child, learning woodcraft from his father. A memory he had not accessed in decades, now clear and poignant. I remember, he said softly, and I will keep that promise if I can. Leaving Luca in his parents' care, Tiberius made his way to the small Imperial command center that remained after the withdrawal. Most of the troops were gone, but the communication systems were still operational. Using his command codes for the final time, Tiberius accessed the battlecruiser's approach vector. Imperial cruiser dominance, this is General Tiberius. He transmitted, be advised that Mandara is under my protection. Any hostile action will be met with proportional response. General Tiberius, came the reply from the cruiser's captain. You are ordered to surrender yourself and all defectors immediately. This is your only warning. Tiberius had anticipated this response. From the command console, he activated the planetary defense system, a network of orbital cannons the Empire had installed during the initial occupation. The weapons had been intended to protect Imperial interests from external threats. Now they would be used against the Empire itself. I repeat, Mandara is under my protection. Tiberius transmitted, "Withdraw from this system immediately." The cruiser's response was to launch a squadron of fighter craft. Tiberius had expected no less. Using the defense system's targeting computer, he locked onto the approaching fighters and fired warning shots, precise blasts that disabled engines without destroying the craft. "The next volley will not be a warning," he transmitted. On the cruiser's command deck, uncertainty prevailed. They faced not some ragtag group of rebels, but General Tiberius himself, the Empire's most decorated military commander, with access to Imperial defense systems and intimate knowledge of Imperial tactics. "Withdraw to safe distance," the cruiser's captain finally ordered. "Request additional forces and clear instructions from Central Command." It was the response Tiberius had gambled on. Imperial officers were trained to minimize losses, and facing Tiberius's reputation and expertise, caution would prevail over immediate action. It would buy the evacuees precious time. Returning to the colony ship, Tiberius found the last of the villagers boarding. Luca waited at the foot of the ramp, his small face set in determination. "I told them I wouldn't leave without you," he said as Tiberius approached. "That was unwise," Tiberius replied, but he felt a surge of warmth at the boy's loyalty. "The Empire will send more ships, with clearer orders to attack regardless of losses. We must leave now." Aboard the colony ship, Tiberius took the pilot's seat. His cybernetic interfaces connected with the ship's systems, allowing him to control the vessel with thoughts alone. As the engines hummed to life, he glanced at Luca, who had insisted on staying in the cockpit. "This will not be a comfortable journey," Tiberius warned. "Imperial forces will pursue us until we reach the uncharted regions." Luca nodded solemnly. "But we'll be together, all of us." The ship lifted off, leaving Mandara's surface behind. Through the viewport, they watched as the green world grew smaller, a jewel set against the blackness of space. For many aboard, it was the only home they had ever known. For Tiberius, it was the place where he had rediscovered his humanity. As predicted, the Imperial cruiser moved to intercept once it became clear the colony ship was escaping. Tiberius had anticipated this as well. Using his knowledge of Imperial blind spots and sensor limitations, he piloted the ship through a series of evasive maneuvers that confused the cruiser's tracking systems. "They're still following," Luca observed as the cruiser appeared on the long-range scanners. "Not for long," Tiberius replied. He directed the ship toward a nearby asteroid field, treacherous territory that Imperial vessels were programmed to avoid due to the risk of collision. But Tiberius, with his enhanced reflexes and neural connection to the ship's systems, navigated the field with precision that no human pilot could match. The pursuing cruiser hesitated at the field's edge, then attempted to follow. Within minutes, it had sustained damage from asteroid impacts and was forced to withdraw. "You did it!" Luca exclaimed. "Temporarily," Tiberius cautioned. "They will send others, but we have gained the time we need." For 3 weeks, the colony ship journeyed through space, staying on the fringes of Imperial territory, using routes that Tiberius knew were rarely patrolled. The passengers adjusted to life aboard the crowded vessel, organizing themselves into work shifts, sharing resources, supporting one another. Tiberius observed their cooperation with growing understanding of what Luca had tried to teach him. That connection to others was not weakness, but strength. During the journey, Tiberius's cybernetic systems began to malfunction more frequently. Without Imperial maintenance, the complex machinery that had replaced much of his body was deteriorating. He kept this from the others, working alone in the ship's small engineering bay to make what repairs he could. Luca found him there one night, hunched over a diagnostic panel, his cybernetic arm partially disassembled. "You're breaking," the boy said quietly. Tiberius looked up, surprised. He had thought Luca asleep. "Some components are reaching the end of their operational lifespan," he acknowledged. "It is not unexpected." Luca sat beside him, watching as Tiberius attempted to reconnect neural pathways in the exposed machinery of his arm. Does it hurt? Pain is... Tiberius began automatically, then stopped. The Empire had taught him to deny pain, to classify it as irrelevant data. But the truth was different. Yes, he admitted. It hurts. Luca placed his small hand on Tiberius's remaining human one. I'm sorry. The simple compassion brought a rush of emotion that Tiberius no longer tried to suppress. The Empire designed me to be dependent on their technology, he explained, to ensure my loyalty. Without their maintenance facilities, my cybernetic components will eventually fail. What happens then? Luca asked, his voice small. Tiberius considered the question honestly. I don't know. No cyborg of my generation has ever lived long enough to experience complete system failure. The Empire replaces us when our efficiency declines. Replaces you? You mean? When a cyborg soldier or officer reaches the end of their useful lifespan, they are decommissioned. Tiberius said, their remaining organic components are used for medical research. Their cybernetic parts are recycled for the next generation. Horror crossed Luca's young face. That's terrible. They treat you like things, not people. That is what we become, in their eyes. Tiberius said, what I became, not fully human, not fully machine, a tool to be used until it breaks. Luca's expression changed to determination. We'll find a way to help you. My father knows mechanics. Maybe he can learn how your parts work. Tiberius shook his head. Imperial cybernetics are far beyond civilian technology, but I appreciate your concern. When they finally reached the coordinates Tiberius had selected, a small fertile moon orbiting a gas giant in an uncharted system, the colony ship's fuel reserves were nearly depleted. It was their last hope for a new beginning. The moon exceeded expectations. Scans showed breathable atmosphere, abundant water, and vegetation similar enough to Mendara's that the colonists' agricultural knowledge would be applicable. There were no signs of intelligent native life, though various animal species appeared to thrive in the lush forests that covered much of the surface. Landing in a clearing near a freshwater lake, the colonists emerged cautiously from the ship, many falling to their knees to feel solid ground beneath them after weeks in space. Children ran and laughed, releasing the tension of the long journey. Adults began the immediate tasks of setting up temporary shelters and exploring the immediate vicinity. Tiberius observed it all from the ship's ramp, his cybernetic eye recording data about the environment, his tactical programs automatically identifying defensive positions and potential threats. Old habits, he realized, from a life that no longer existed. Luca found him there, as he often did. Aren't you coming to explore? I am monitoring for Imperial pursuit, Tiberius explained. We should remain vigilant. Luca took his hand, the cybernetic one that no longer functioned properly. The Empire doesn't know where we are. You said so yourself. Come see our new home. Home. The word resonated in Tiberius's mind. He had not had a home since childhood, before the Empire recruited him, before the battle that left him broken and led to his transformation into the perfect soldier. He allowed Luca to lead him from the ship, into the sunlight of this new world. The air was sweet, filled with the sense of unfamiliar plants. Birds, or creatures like birds, called from the nearby forest. Water lapped gently at the lake's shore. It's beautiful, Luca said, watching Tiberius's reaction. It is. Sufficient for human habitation. Tiberius replied, but a smile, an expression his face had nearly forgotten how to form, tugged at the corner of his mouth. The colonists quickly established a temporary settlement near the landing site. Within days, they had constructed basic shelters, begun planting crops from seeds brought from Mendara, and established hunting parties to supplement their food supplies. Tiberius found himself included in their plans and discussions, his tactical knowledge valued for defense and organization rather than conquest. Elian approached him one evening as he sat by the community fire, watching Luca play with other children, a game involving catching glowing insects that emerged at dusk. The council would like you to consider a permanent leadership position, Elian said, sitting beside him. Many feel your knowledge and experience would be invaluable as we build our new society. Tiberius was surprised. I am a military commander, not a civilian administrator, and my functionality is declining. We're aware of your health concerns, Elian said carefully. Sarah has been speaking with Dr. Kaida, who worked in cybernetic medicine before the Empire's occupation. She believes some of your systems could be maintained with local resources, perhaps modified to work without Imperial technology. That seems unlikely, Tiberius said, though hope flickered unexpectedly within him. Perhaps, Elian acknowledged, but we want to try. You've given us a second chance at life, Tiberius. Let us try to do the same for you. Over the following months, as the colony established itself and began to thrive, Dr. Kaida worked with Tiberius to understand his cybernetic systems. Some components were beyond their ability to maintain, but others could be adapted to function with locally available materials. Tiberius's body would never again operate at the peak efficiency the Empire had engineered, but he could continue to live, to be part of the community that had formed around him. As his dependence on Imperial technology decreased, Tiberius found more of his humanity returning. Emotions he had suppressed for decades emerged: joy, sorrow, anger, love. Sometimes they overwhelmed him, and he would retreat to the solitude of the forest until he could master them. But, increasingly, he welcomed these feelings as proof that he was reclaiming his human identity. 1 year after their arrival, the colony celebrated its first harvest festival. The crops had yielded beyond expectations. New shelters had been built to replace the temporary ones, and the first child born on their new world had arrived just a week earlier. It was a time of joy and reflection. Luca, now 11, found Tiberius sitting on a hillside overlooking the settlement. The former general's appearance had changed significantly. His non-functional cybernetic arm had been replaced with a simpler, mechanical prosthetic, designed by Dr. Kaida. Parts of his facial implants had been removed, revealing more of his human features. He looked less like the fearsome General Tiberius and more like the man he might have been without the Empire's interference. Are you hiding again? Luca asked, sitting beside him. Observing, Tiberius corrected. It is satisfying to see what has been accomplished. Thanks to you, Luca said. If you hadn't helped us escape, we'd all be dead, and Mandara would be destroyed. Tiberius shook his head. I am responsible for the destruction of many worlds before Mandara. One act of conscience does not erase decades of obedience to a cruel empire. But you changed, Luca insisted. That's what matters. And you keep changing, keep trying to be better. Tiberius looked at the boy who had, against all probability, awakened his dormant humanity. You taught me compassion, Luca, a lesson I should never have needed. Maybe that's why we met, Luca suggested. Maybe that's why everything happened the way it did. So you could learn, and so could I. What did you learn? Tiberius asked, curious. Luca considered the question seriously. That people can change, that even someone who seems scary and dangerous can have good inside them. That sometimes you have to see past what someone looks like or what they've done to find who they really are. Wisdom beyond the boy's years, Tiberius thought. Perhaps Luca had always possessed this insight, this ability to see the humanity in others even when they couldn't see it in themselves. There's dancing starting, Luca said, standing and offering his hand. Will you come? In his previous life, Tiberius would have dismissed such an invitation instantly. Dancing was inefficient, purposeless, a waste of energy that could be better directed toward productive tasks. But now, looking at Luca's hopeful face and the celebration unfolding in the village below, he saw it differently, as an expression of joy, of connection, of life itself. I do not know how to dance, he admitted. Luca grinned. Neither do I. We can learn together. As they walked down the hill toward the music and laughter, Tiberius reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from feared conqueror to community member. From cyborg weapon to a man relearning his humanity, the Empire had taken much from him, parts of his body and mind that could never be fully restored. But they had never succeeded in taking his capacity for change, for growth, for compassion. That night, surrounded by people who had once feared him, but now accepted him as one of their own, Tiberius danced awkwardly, but with genuine joy. And watching Luca laugh at his clumsy attempts, he knew he had found something the Empire had never offered him, something no amount of power or conquest could provide: a home, a family, and a chance at redemption. The feared cyborg general who had conquered the galaxy's edge had indeed learned compassion from a farmer's child. And in doing so, he had conquered something far more important: the prison of isolation and cruelty that had held his soul captive for so long.